Hey guys, this is Genevieve, and I'm going to be presenting the Boeing 737 MAX scandal. Now, for decades, Boeing has had a reputation for building and producing quality airplanes. Now, one of Boeing's most successful models was the 737. In October of 2018, Boeing had introduced its most recent update to the 737 called the MAX 8 to an Indonesian airline called Lion Group Air. Now, shortly after takeoff, the plane had crashed, killing 189 passengers on board. Unfortunately, the FAA at the time, Federal Aviation Administration at the time, had failed to ground the planes immediately and address the crisis. 5 months later, a second crash had occurred with another Boeing 737 MAX 8 plane with an Ethiopian airline, killing an additional 157 passengers. So, after decades of building this reputation, Boeing's credibility was now being scrutinized and questioned by FAA regulators, news media outlets, and families of the deceased. The Wall Street Journal reported that Boeing took the 737's existing frame and paired it with a more advanced and higher power output engine. Now, this had changed the plane's aerodynamics, and under certain conditions, the plane's nose would pitch up. And in order to pitch the nose back down, the maneuvering characteristics augmentation system, or also known as the MCAS software, was installed. However, there was a problem discovered with the MCAS indicator known as the angle of attack disagree alert. Now, this alert was designed to warn pilots of the plane's sensors transmitting contradictory data about the direction of the plane's nose. Now, when this issue was first discovered, Boeing had insisted that this non-working alert was not a safety hazard and that the plane would continue to work properly. So, according to Bloomberg author Jet Freely, in its rush to get the 737 MAX onto the market, Boeing had not properly tested the new system or adequately trained its pilots. The company's lax standards when overseeing the development of the MAX 8 was only the beginning of the warning signs. A year prior to the 737 MAX arrival onto the market. Now, this decision by Boeing to withhold that information from the FAA seemed uncharacteristic of its company values. So, how did Boeing respond to all this? After its first crash, Boeing wasn't as quick to disseminate information to parties involved. For example, days after the crash, Plana Pramesti, who is Indonesia's Civil Aviation Authority, expected a visit from Boeing leadership and FAA regulators to get information and seek guidance based on the 737 MAX. Unfortunately, the meeting never occurred, and many of Promesti's questions remained unanswered. Reporters were also finding it challenging to obtain statements and information from both Boeing and the FAA about the crash. But finally, in December of 2019, the board of directors of Boeing had finally decided to fire Dennis Muhlenberg, who was the CEO at that time, shut down all the factories that were producing 737 MAX 8, and decided to keep grounded any remaining 737 MAX 8 planes. So, to prevent exacerbation of negative outcomes in a crisis situation such as this, it's best to focus on containment. Our crisis management text does recommend 4 rules to contain a bad situation. Use quick and decisive action, put people first, be physically at the scene, and to communicate liberally. Unfortunately, Boeing failed to communicate quickly and immediately with the public, regulators, and everyone involved. It did fail to put people first, and by excuse me, it did fail to put people first and failed to be transparent of its shortcomings to the public, as well as communicating liberally with everyone involved during this difficult time. The company's actions to do this had negatively impacted the good standing that Boeing had with its shareholders and the public. After decades of being one of the world's leaders in aerodynamic engineering, Boeing regressed when it rushed to produce the MAX 8. Inadequate quality control and withholding information from regulators, pilots, and leadership were significant warnings that were ignored by management. It did respond poorly to the events by failing to act quickly and communicate effectively. Boeing could have done more to be transparent with regulators and stakeholders by being honest, candid, and providing facts. It's helpful for Boeing to incorporate these principles into their business strategies if they want to regain trust in the industry and the public. Thank you for listening, and I hope you guys have a good night.